Hey guys, it's Romulus here, and time flies fast, doesn't it? Ever since around the summer of 2016, when both the normal world and the music world just collapsed, time has started to move by even faster. I still feel like I'm just beginning high school, and I'm in college. The statement is even more true for 2019, when we started off with a bang, and 2 seconds later, it was already over, and 2020 is about to start. That is honestly a real shame, since 2019 was actually a pretty great and wild year to close out the equally wild decade. So many random artists that you wouldn't expect or even know blew up and pushed already established artists to the side. Adding on to the complete craziness of the year was Billboard also being thrown into chaos, and not just in the normal way with streaming payola becoming a thing and TikTok blowing up. There was also the fact that Billboard had no idea what to do for a year. Last year, in 2018, they actually ended it off early, and now they've decided that 52 weeks is shifted back. For the Gregorian world, we usually decide that December 31st is the last day of the year, but Billboard seems to think it ends sometime before Thanksgiving. That's why I had no idea what was going to be on this list, because I had no idea what would qualify until around the beginning of December. So, if my list isn't out on December 1st, that's probably why. We did get lucky overall with the amount of truly awful songs being limited, but there were still a couple big hits I absolutely despised. Just to clarify, I'm only going to be talking about songs that made it onto the Billboard Year and Hot 100 for 2019, and didn't repeat from the previous year. Sure, there were some songs that debuted big and flamed out fast, but those weren't actual hits. They're mostly just established artists getting something to the top because of name value, and then flaming out once people realized how toxic and trash it is. With that out of the way, let's start off the list with some songs that almost made it, but weren't quite bad enough to land a spot onto my top 10.
I talked you into slipping down the hall, baby, turning on your playlist you play when you're in the shower.
A part of me thinks this song could have actually worked if they dropped the pedal steel. It just makes the entire chorus sound creepy and ruins any sweet feeling some of the lyrics had.
Now you're looking like a line from a Van Draw song.
Yeah, good job reminding me of actually talented lyricists who can compose good R&B songs. What are some of your guys' best lyrics?
Baby, what song you make me wanna roll my windows down and cruise. Holy, I'm high on loving you. Whoa, hold up, girl, don't you know you're beautiful? And it's easy to see.
They may be fun, but they are not sexy.
No matter where we go, no matter what we do, if you're there, girl, I've got my eyes on you.
This is the exact opposite problem. I actually like the fact that Chase Rice had the guts to just ditch country music entirely and give off a less organic sound. But these lyrics.
Don't you remember Times Square? People counting down everywhere. 2000 whatever, no, I didn't care. 'Cause baby, you were there.
You see, if he had thrown out some negative time that he had experienced while he was with this girl, it probably would have worked, because then it would have just shown how he doesn't care about the bad things as long as she's around. But if he's saying he's ignoring all the good stuff while she's around, that just comes off like you're just staring at her tits way too much.
Drip too hard, don't stand too close, you gon' fuck around and drown off this way.
This is just a reminder that Lil Baby is the least talented rapper in mainstream hip-hop. He's just another Young Thug clone, but without any of the actual, interesting qualities that Young Thug has with his bizarre caterwauling. Lil Baby just has the same high-pitched voice Young Thug does, but somehow makes it sound boring.
Stay out of here, yeah, stay out of here. Rich piece of bankroll, showing how to do it. Baby going crazy, you been getting straight to it.
I want you to suck it.
She told me put my heart in the bag, and nobody gets hurt.
In terms of quality, this song is probably worse than just about all of this list, but unlike his other songs, Lucid Dreams, All of Girls Are the Same, I cannot take it seriously. Sure, Juice WRLD is being as much of a misogynist and a whiny bitch as he is on his other songs, but the skittered piano lines and Juice WRLD's bombastic over-the-top screaming just makes it all laughable. I almost pity him, and since this made the list just barely, it was literally the last spot on Billboard's year-end list. I kind of want to take pity on him, especially since of how many times I'm ashamed to have sung this song and just start screaming it at the top of my lungs when it comes on.
Act up, you could get smashed up. Act up, you could get smashed up.
City Girls are kind of just annoying. They sound way too much like the Real Housewives of New Jersey. But it would also help me care if they sound like they were caring as well. Like, that hook just sounds so phoned in.
Real ass bitch, give a fuck about a nigga. Big Birkin bag, hold 5-6 figures.
This is just revenge for when they helped push In My Feelings to become one of the biggest hits of last year.
Meet me at the London. If you find time, we can run one. Talk about some things we can undo. You just in the pen, I can find you.
The London highlights a serious problem when it comes to modern mainstream rap, where the concept of feature culture comes into play, where every single has to have one or more popular guest artists to get hype and name recognition to the top when you can't actually factor in quality. I won't even complain about Travis Scott's part because I actually think it's pretty solid with T-Minus's production, but everything else just does not fit. J. Cole is just sounding smug as he always does and just brag about how great he is. And I usually am a fan of Young Thug's bizarreness, but here, he gets a bit overboard.
I can charge him like a Dodge and a demon. Got your bride in the garage eating semen.
Knocking boots. Knocking boots.
I'm tired of Luke Bryan just putting out shit songs onto the year-end list, just scraping by. This one's especially awful since there isn't even a groove here. It's so limp with that fake, hollow guitar. Also, the song title is just Western slang for having sex, so just imagine that this song is literally called Sex. Just that. Compared to most years, those were actually some pretty decent dishonorable mentions. 2019 wasn't that bad.
We love the earth. It is our planet.
Oh yeah, that happened. Yeah, I can't be on the list proper because it didn't actually make the year-end list. It crashed pretty hard after May. But the main reason I want to bring it up, not just because it is complete and utter garbage and worse than just about everything here, there's this one line that completely ruined any faith I had in a certain band.
How's it going? I'm a cow. You drink milk from my tits.
That is Zac Brown of the Zac Brown Band right there. Yeah, he did not have a good year. Now that you remember how Earth was a thing, let's get on to some bad songs that actually stuck the landing and became big hits. Let's kick things off in fashion with...
I'm the bad guy. Whoa.
Since the year didn't have too many outright stinkers, making the final slot on this entry, number 10, was actually a pretty tough decision. I had a bunch of songs that were fairly bad, but weren't outright horrible, so I had no idea what to pick for this one. Should I go with the least inspired song, the least ambitious, the most messy? Nah, I'll just go for the Domestic Abuser.
Little baby in a bag and I'm Birkin. No 9 to 5, put the work in.
Not only am I baffled that Chris Brown actually had to have one of the biggest hits of the year in 2019, but I'm more baffled by Drake somehow sitting out the entirety of the year taking a rest after Scorpion got some mixed press. But he still got 5 hits onto the year-end list. That's more than almost everyone. Drake could literally sneeze and would be in the top 10. And I shouldn't be complaining for him because on this song he's actually pretty solid. He brings a similar vibe to Hold On, We're Going Home, but it's got a bit more of a creepy vibe similar to that song, and while I do respect some of the more chunky, blocky instrumentation and that lo-fi beat, it isn't as good and it's still very clunky and a bit messy, bit of an amateur hour move. What made this song so bad is, surprise, Chris Brown is still really untalented. The video gives you the impression that he's a good dancer, and I'll give him that, but that's just one thing on the list of talents Chris Brown has. What he is not is a good singer, and you can tell that by the just drenching of auto-tune onto his vocals.
Me and perfect.
The subject matter is a bit more questionable here. He's trying to talk about how this girl has no guidance in her life, and It's a bit creepy coming from Chris Brown, and especially coming from Drake.
Play no games. Fuck around, get you my last name.
You probably just met this chick, and now you're rushing to marriage. That is a no-no, Chris Brown.
Ooh, wow. Chris Brown, dancer extraordinaire.
I'm the bad guy. Whoa.
Even though I still dislike The Shape of You for being a clusterfuck of quirky ideas, all kind of just meshed into one ball, I at least respect it for being not a complete sellout. Like, who else would make this weird tropic house sound in 2017? Oh yeah, that's right. But still, this is still an Ed Sheeran song. You can clearly tell that it's even got some nice cool tricks up its sleeve, like the nice little percussion being the guitar thumping. But if there's one thing Ed Sheeran could do to actually get on a really bad list and make a bad song, it's to become stale.
'Cause I don't care when I'm with my baby, yeah. All the bad things disappear.
I've been the last on the train to call out Ed Sheeran for being a complete pop sellout, but this song right here was what got most people, including me, onto that bandwagon. The worst part is, it wouldn't be bad if Ed Sheeran was still making good music, and while he still has, this song is probably his worst ever. It isn't even mixed well, and you can clearly tell that with just the percussion, the stale trap percussion here, just completely smothering the entire mix. And this is basically all I can hear whenever I listen to the song. It completely drowns out the fact that Justin Bieber and Ed Sheeran have no chemistry at all. Like Love Yourself, that was an Ed Sheeran written song originally meant for him, but he decided to be kind and give it to Justin Bieber. It turned out to be pretty well for both of them. Ed Sheeran's nice, textured writing with good, sick roast at the girl, combined with Justin Bieber's absolute bitchiness, completely making one of the best songs of that year. But here, it just seems like Ed Sheeran wanted this just so he could get a collaboration. There's absolutely zero interplay between these guys, and Justin Bieber sounds like he's absolutely phoning it in for a fat paycheck. Unlike the writing on Love Yourself, the writing on I Don't Care is just generic. It's like Ed Sheeran just wrote this in an hour, didn't even proofread it, didn't draft it, just decided to turn this in and get the fat paycheck. There were some good songs off that number 6 collaboration, which I'll talk about later, but here, this is just his worst song ever, and it's because he's being a disappointment in the fact that he's a just unoriginal sellout.
I'm the bad guy. Whoa.
When it comes to songs I hate, I'm actually usually in the popular opinion when it comes to the general trash, but this next pick some people actually seem to like. But I'm here to tell you that your opinion's wrong and this song is trash.
I got hoes calling a young nigga fall.
I may have let this one slide like some other really trashy, just improvised trap rap that was on my dishonorable mentions, if it wasn't in the top 5 during December of last year. Yeah, that's the other thing. I completely forgot this one existed until I looked at the Hot 100 songs for the year end of 2019 and realized, wait, why is this in this year? Similar to songs like Tatiana, the original novelty of the song wore off after about the second listen, so all you're left with is just some guy who has no talent rapping over a beat that you could compose in 2 minutes. And unlike the other songs I mentioned, it's completely incoherent. The title of this song, Mo Bamba, is about an NBA player named Mohamed Bamba, and from what I can tell, it's trying to show how he's cool or is friends like with this guy, but he doesn't really give much detail and just shits around about 20 different ideas. The reason this song is so incoherent is because Sheck West apparently did this in one singular take, which is something you never do, because it'll just come out like shit and you will have no actual thought process that is coherent. That's also why his flow is basically non-existent. It's kind of all over the place and has no actual dictation to it. It's just a 3-minute long headache and even has this god-awful outro where he gets into a high-pitched squeak.
With the motherfucker down. With the
motherfucking down. With the motherfucking down.
I would hate the song way more, but there is this one part towards the middle where he actually gets pretty hyped for around 5 seconds, and that is inspired.
Oh, fuck. Shit. Bitch. Yeah, Shaq West said I'm getting really rich.
Do you want to hear Mo Bamba or Sicko Mode?
Yeah, thanks. I'd take Sicko Mode, a project that actually had effort and lots of time put into it to get a meticulous project out, over this.
I'm the bad guy. Whoa.
Let's just cut to the chase, because I refuse to write a clever intro for a song with a pedophile on it.
Swerving, how you look so perfect on your worst days. Double C it purchase, you deserve it. Niggas in your DM, they be thirsty.
6ix9ine shouldn't be charting still, and should never have even charted to begin with. The afterwash of 2018 has arrived in its worst form, with Tekashi showing up on this year-end Hot 100 for probably the last time in his career. Boogie, an artist who I can usually tolerate, is all over the place, with a phoned-in chorus swapped out for a whole manner of confusing flows, including an embarrassing Young Thug impersonation that his voice is too innocent to sell. The song itself seems to have an equal amount of cluelessness, with Boogie starting off by telling this girl how good she looks, but then swaps it to flat out telling her he will fuck her from the back and leave her turning, a 360 in both her body and tone. Despite him being kind of creepy in some areas, Boogie at least sticks to the concept of relationship. 6ix9ine, on the other hand, is given a verse entirely dedicated to gang violence, which, given his trials, should not be happening, and also sounds like a corporate move to drive a Boogie's sales by placing a well-known and controversial figure on an otherwise boring and forgettable awkward song. As a final point, I just want to bring up on the multiple watermarks of this producer.
Oh, that's London on the track.
We got London on the track.
They seem very unearned, since the background is filled with just generic trap fills and a creepy muted guitar line. Thank fucking God we're going into a new decade, because Tekashi is going to be left behind for the better.
I'm the bad guy. Whoa.
Despite the current music landscape being shaped by streaming as radio is pushed to the side, this was a pretty big year for country. Out of the 100 songs that made the year-end list, 15 of them were country songs, and 2 more songs were arguably country in some form. That is a sixth of the entire list being country, something that's never happened in this decade. Not even like 10 songs qualifying for any other list, but 16, that's a lot. This is probably due to how diverse country was overall. There's the neo-traditional sound of Luke Combs, the pop country crossover hits of Dan and Shay, the limbs of bro country still struggling as it's been dying off, and many more different varieties of country. And all of them sucked. Well, except Luke Combs, he's our little sweetie now, isn't he? But yeah, most of country did suck this year. I probably could have filled the entire list with country if I pleased, but I stuck with just 2 entries for the list proper. The first being Now, with a method of delivery I didn't mention previously, that being the TikTok challenge.
Gonna do the 2-step, then cowboy boogie. Grab a sweetheart and spin out with him. Do the hold down and get into it.
You know when you go to a store and you see the knockoff shop brand of a product that you know will be bad, but you have to get it anyway because they don't have the original superior version of it? Well, the Get Up is just the Hannaford brand cola of the country charts because Old Town Road isn't allowed to be there, but this sack of shit is. The Get Up fails not only in the regards that it's blatantly a bad impression of recreating Old Town Road, but it doesn't even have the same genre sound as Old Town Road. Here we have cheap clap beat with gang vocals and sandy guitar. That's not country hip-hop or instrumental. No, that's just plain bro country. It's as enraging as Blanco Brown, who is pulling off one of the most offensive southern accents I have heard. It's great that he seems to be having fun, but he'll be the only one having a good time on the dance floor. If for some godforsaken reason you play this song in a room with friends and try to dance to it, You will fail, as this song gives you awful instructions forcing you to watch the video to follow along. You literally can't listen to just the song for its intended purpose. If that's not an instant conceptual failure, well, I don't know what is. A dance song you can't dance to, just wonderful.
I'm the bad guy. Whoa.
As much as I love acts like Nirvana or Tupac Shakur, I do have to admit that they're only remembered as the best of the best because they died early on in their careers when they were still in the prime of their music-making ability. Now, obviously, if they hadn't died in the 90s, they still would have made really good music and continued to be received well critically and publicly. But eventually they would have slipped up, they would have released an album that wasn't as good, or would have put out probably an awful single that stained their reputation. I know this is true because we already have a great example of that happening.
Like a shepherd having sex with his sheep. Fuck what you heard.
Eminem started off his career with back-to-back classics and was groundbreaking for being the only white male who could be big in hip-hop. But now, in 2019, his legacy is sketchy at best. Old Eminem was able to break through because he came from the tough streets of Detroit and had credibility. Plus, he was funny in a demented way that appealed to a lot of young kids. Now, Eminem is relying on Ed Sheeran to attempt hit songs and doing bad Sony soundtracks.
I got that adrenaline, not knowing when I'm never gonna slow up in 'em.
If he had died right before Encore in 2003, Slim Shady would have been up there with Tupac and Biggie as the greatest rappers of all time. But Eminem isn't alone, because in 2019, there's another group who's losing a lot of their great legacy.
Hey, look, ma, I made it. Hey, look, ma, I made it.
Comparing Eminem to Panic at the Disco seems like a weird connection at first glance, but I think they're following in a similar career path, just a little staggered. They started off with two great classic albums, had a third-year slump, then came back eventually to make some great music, albeit never reaching the same heights as before. And now, they're just sad sellouts. Panic hasn't been a band since 2016, but Brendan Urie seems too insecure to go by just his name alone, even with songs where he's just a guest artist. So he keeps the husk alive to produce solo work, which, I'll be honest, isn't even that bad. Most of the album, Pray for the Wicked, is good and even has songs that resemble some of the old theatricality, off-the-wall songwriting the band started with. But my god, Hey Look Ma, I Made It is the worst Panic at the Disco song ever recorded. Brendan Urie knows he's no longer truly authentic because he's made an entire song satirizing the music industry and getting big to deflect from that.
Cause I'm a hooker selling songs and my pimp's a record label.
Dude, that's just nasty. The cheapness comes in full swing during the chorus, which is just a horrendous produced fake horn section compressed into an accordion, which you think would belong in an AJR track. The real kicker to the song is the end, after the second time going through the chorus, which builds up to a monster of a breakdown. I use the word monster literally. This stuff will keep your children awake and afraid until 3 in the morning. Brendan's voice, which already sounds like he's singing too hard and still missing high notes, is given a shrill vocal effect and a backing gang chant with percussion being swapped out for trap hi-hats, combining those with the already plastic brass gives us a sludge of toxic gunk to close out an already tortured soul. Oh, and the mixing throughout the song is completely worthless. Brendan Urie sounds 50 feet away from the microphone, the brass dominates everything, being shelved by loud trap percussion, and the gang chants make it sound like Brendan Urie is trying to be the next Sam Hunt. 10-year-old me would have been horrified to read that sentence, and also wondered who Sam Hunt was. A more simple time, indeed.
Hey, look, ma, I made it. I'm the bad guy. Whoa.
So I just made a joke bashing Sam Hunt, and have said nothing but bad about the state of meat-headed frat doofuses running the genre of country. But today is the day of change, where I admit that I miss bro country, even though it still exists to some degree, and it was mostly a mistake, At least it was an interesting mistake. I can remember the entire lyrics to Body Like a Back Road, something I cannot say for any Dan and Shay song. So while I despise the subgenre, and it may just be Stockholm Syndrome from all the tortured years I had to listen to country radio, if the next song is the future of Nashville, then we're heading in the wrong direction.
But I got one thing right. You.
Now I'm thinking about it, there were some weird collaborations in 2019. We had a 90s one-hit wonder work with a nobody TikTok star. There was another 90s one-hit wonder who collaborated with a washed-up pop star and the biggest name in reggaeton. But those two eclipsed a more interesting case of two people who are already mattered before joining forces, Marshmello and Kane Brown. Where those other songs made no sense collaboration-wise and the connections between the artists were non-existent, Kane Brown working with Marshmello makes way too much sense. Marshmello is an EDM producer, so he's already collaborating with people from all types of genres. He worked with Churches. Why not Nashville's Half Black Darling? When I say it makes sense for these two to work together, I mean that in the worst way. The dominance of streaming has collapsed any sense of the word genre, and traditional or even frat house douche country has no chance of being streamed on Spotify, which has made the country establishment even less relevant. But viruses always find ways to adapt, and their solution to the new medium of music consumption is just to make monotonous, uninspiring generic junk. It's just a standard Marshmello song with ominous pedal steel as a drop, making it very creepy. This and Talk You Out of It start to make me think that the sound just doesn't work in modern country. That song was better by knowing to focus less on the instrumentation, but you should expect subpar production choices from Marshmello in 2019. Not only is the instrumentation and general sound off-putting, it clashes with the generic writing structure. A song where you're talking about how she's your girl and how you love her and she's the one thing that you have right in your life. A song like that should be sweet and endearing, something that Dan and Shay actually do get right. But here, it's just bleak and ominous, just two opposing forces clashing with each other to make the worst sound possible. We used to fear when hip-hop started crossing over to country world, but now we might have to embrace the possibility of Thomas Rhett working with Calvin Harris. That still would be better than this song.
I'm the bad guy. Whoa.
The growth in streaming has impacted music pretty heavily, I've said that already, but one of the things it's done in a positive manner is bring more populist elements into what gets big. See, radio when it was big, that's mainly controlled by the music executives. Payola has proven that. But streaming, that's an individual's choice to select a song and listen to it. There are still influences that can bring out some ugly corporate sides into manipulating the charts through streaming, but still it is more populist than previous. But that's not always good, because sometimes people have really bad opinions and the cream does not rise to the top. And I'm starting to get tired of one-hit wonder SoundCloud rappers just making their entries here.
Leave me alone. Drunk as fuck, bitch, you dumb as fuck. Running out the bugs down.
I don't know what you want me to say. The song's literally just about him trying to get this drunk girl to leave him alone. There is not a lot of creative analysis and contextualization in that. It's bankrupt of any actual thought or ideas or effort, and it doesn't even sound good. It's not even a good banger. I can tolerate Migos sometimes because they at least know how to put on a good banger once in a while, despite how devoid of content they usually are. Here, the only thing noteworthy about Phil Denero's delivery is how he sounds completely hoarse. Like, dude, you could have just rested for a couple weeks and released the song later when your voice was actually working. Hopefully something changes soon, because I don't want to have to keep looking up random people for only one song to talk about.
I'm the bad guy. Whoa.
80s pop was entirely defined by new wave music crossing over from across the pond. Sharing the same language and having similar cultures means that England will always get hits in America more easily than any other foreign country. But we are getting a new wave of British artists rising to the top of the Hot 100, a second wave if you'd like to call it. The common trend here is singer-songwriters, probably because British guys have sophisticated accents and are way cuter than American boys. Ed Sheeran was the banner child for this trend, but now we have another poster boy we have to talk about.
Now the day bleeds into nightfall, and you're not here to get me through it all.
I didn't hate Someone You Loved for the longest time. Like, I always thought it was bad, but never past the point of just slight annoyance. After radio overplay has made this unavoidable, I truly realized why everyone despises this song, and I'm very thankful I'm not British. This was the biggest song of the year in the UK, and stayed at number 1 for 2 months. The worst thing about being British since the foundation of the Luftwaffe. The reason everyone immediately hated the song was because of how barren it is of any complexity. Just the slightest of complexity would be nice. That's all we ask. Instead, our entire instrumentation is just the 4 chords of pop played ad nauseum on a piano, giving the focus of the song to Lewis Capaldi, so he can whine about a breakup. Where have I heard that type of idea before?
Maybe I don't understand this. You're changing, I can't stand it.
2018 will not leave my head, will it? Changes is still the worst song, and I regret not putting on my worst hit songs of last year, but XXXTentacion might actually be a better singer and a better artist. Both men are complete amateurs and it shows, but at least XXXTentacion embraces this. Lewis Capaldi's singing is over the top and more screamy than he has any right to be. I can't even call it powerful because of how shit his voice is, even for amateur standards. Like, I might bash on certain pop stars for sounding bad in a certain song, but they're actually trained and can sing. Lewis Capaldi is literally unable to hold a note. To match his over-trying vocals are his overwritten lyrics, which are pretty enraging to anyone who has written before.
Now the day bleeds into nightfall. I let my guard down, and then you pull the rug. I'm going on during this time. I feel there's no one to save me.
Some songs are great because of how direct the writing is, but Lewis Capaldi is a part of the toxic mindset that every song has to be written meticulously and has to fit in over-the-top metaphors. While songs definitely do that and succeed, they usually require a good frontman to convey the deep meaning, not whatever this is. It hits on the trifecta of horrible singing, barely any composition, and train levels of lyrics, but it didn't even top my list. Let's look at what could possibly be worse than this.
I was getting kinda used to being someone you loved. I'm that bad guy. Whoa.
I started making this list all the way back in January 18th, 2019. While that may seem early to start a video I will record 11 months later, that was the day I knew what my number 1 choice was going to be. While Someone You Loved was the only song to come close to the off-list of my next pick, and I had to wrestle between which one was worse, alternating back and forth, my original decision eventually won out. I'm so disappointed in you, Ariana.
I want it, I got it. I want it, I got it. I want it, I got it. I want it, I got it.
In 2018, Ariana released her 4th studio album in Sweetener, which, to put it mildly, was pretty incredible. Powerful hooks, surprising wacky and experimental production coming from Pharrell Williams, and Ariana's naturally skilled singing all meshed together incredibly. Instead of fully flushing out all of this album had to offer, she rushed a follow-up album with fast-written songs and about 2 weeks on the studio, resulting with their worst project to date. It still was solid, with most of the songs being good just off Ariana's voice alone, but Seven Rings is indefensible. Since I mentioned Ariana's talent as a vocalist, let's start there. This song doesn't have the same baseline of quality the rest of Thank You Next does, because Ariana Grande is rapping on this track. Oh man, someone should have told her no. She is so embarrassing as an MC, which I don't even want to call her, but her flow is as basic as you can get, with just a staccato call and response that stiffens the already limp trap hi-hats and Sound of Music sample, which replaces Gwen Stefani as the worst use of Sound of Music in a pop song. The sample also seems twisted to use as an Ariana made this song just to brag about how rich she is and can buy whatever she wants whenever she wants. This is just a textbook power trip by someone who can't be told no, with the lyrics emphasizing her not realizing this song is relatable to anyone except her. I bet there are a bunch of struggling musicians who love getting $25 for a gig, struggling to get by relating to Ariana's multi-million-dollar empire. Wait a minute, did she even write this song? Let me check. 10 people. It took 10 people to write this song, and these are the lyrics you came up with.
Been through some bad shit, I should be a savage. Who would've thought it turned me to a savage? My wrist, stop watching, my neck is flossy. You like my hair? Gee, thanks, just bought it. Think we tell therapy, my new addiction. Happiness is the same price as red bottom. I don't need a brag, but I be like, put it in the bag, yeah. When you see the max, they stacked up like my ass, yeah. Give me the loot, never mind, I got a juice.
The ultimate reason I solidified my decision for this being the worst hit song of the year wasn't because of the heinous lyrics, or the lack of compelling melody, or even the overall smug elitism the song gives off. No, this song as a whole was just so bad that every listen I found something new to hate about it. Throughout the year, this song would just come on infrequently, and I would find new lyrics or notice new production errors or something in general that I didn't like, and it would add up. Right after I recorded my winter ranking for 2019, I noticed this. That little unnecessary backing vocal that pops in as a way to fill space. Why is it in there? I have no idea. It was a stain on an otherwise good year, and my top choice for the worst hit song of 2019. Hopefully her next album doesn't have a song worse than Seven Rings, but it would take a tragedy for that lack of effort and talent to strike twice for Miss Grande.